We have here Dr. Rameshwar with us from Rutgers University of New Jersey. She has been a cancer biologist,
Stem cell biologist.
and stem cell biologist for almost more than 25 years. And we are here to learn a little bit about her journey and what women are facing, um, all the challenges in science today. With that, I will turn it to Dr. Rameshwar. She is going to talk a little bit about her early life and what got her interested into cancer biology.
So I was born in Guyana, formerly British Guyana, and then I came on a World Health Scholarship to the United States at University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. It just took one class course in immunology. At the time, immunology was where stem cell is right now, with a lot of black boxes. And I keep looking at the black boxes. There were so many unanswered questions, and that's what got me interested in science. Then, when I moved to New Jersey, I was working in a hematology lab, and I realized that if you study hematology, you're actually looking at the primary lymphoid organ, which is part of the immune system. So I decided, why bother in the end stage of immunology? Why not look at the source of immunology, which is the bone marrow? And that led me into my lifelong career in bone marrow biology. Then I got into cancer because breast cancer was a problem, because breast cancer showed a preference to the bone marrow. So the question then become, why is the bone marrow become this friendly environment for breast cancer? And how is it using the microenvironment? But in the middle of all the bone marrow biology, there are stem cells in the bone marrow. At present, there are 5 so far that has been identified, but the most studied is the one that make the immune system, the hematopoietic stem cell, which is the prototype of all other stem cells. And now the one that's really in regenerative medicine are the mesenchymal stem cells. And with the breast cancer, in the bone marrow, which is the dormancy, that one is the cancer stem cell we're focused on to see how it's surviving the bone marrow.
Dr. Rameshwar, it's a very impressive journey, and I know you came from Guyana. That's where you were born and had your primary education, and then moving to US and working through your rank to tenure professor. It's a long journey. Can you talk a little bit about your early life and how getting to this position? What were some of the challenges? What you came through and what you can advise to our viewers or our readers going in future.
Yeah. Well, coming from Guyana was a big advantage to me because it is a third world country and there was not a lot of resources. But I grew up in a time where the world was undergoing a lot of changes. The British Empire was falling, and we were a British colony. India, it started in India, then Ghana followed, and then the Caribbean countries. So I was at the cusp where whoever was taking over the country at the time was trying to design education to suit those kids in those countries to be the leaders of the Caribbean countries. So the education was overseen by these leaders and it was designed. So my education level was very, very solid. But to get to that education level, only few who were tested with were tested based on an IQ exam were able to take advantage of that. IQ was one of those. But to get to that area of the education was not easy because a lot of resources were not available. Public transportation, the roads was tough. It was very difficult, but it built on the it gives you the motivation. It built on something that end up giving you the motivation to be successful in a career, and that to me underscored when I came to United States of in a different culture, in a very different school system, to be able to adjust. It was really difficult. And when I came from one tropical country to Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin, I came in a World Health Scholarship. And I came from a tropical country to a place with a lot of snow, with very limited money, coats. I couldn't afford very warm coat, so it was tough. And then from Wisconsin, for family reasons, I had to move to New Jersey, and I had to work. There was very limited money. I had to work as a tech and do a PhD in a part time, which I finished in 4.5 years actually. But I think my formative years growing in a different country really helped me in this respect. Had I not had those difficulty in a third world country, I don't think I would have been successful in the developed world.
When you talked about the IQ test, can you explain a little bit more about it? How it's designed and
So it was a test, that's an interesting question, because it was a test designed by England for children in the Caribbean country. And it's the same test that was probably given in England. So it was a test to test your ability, and it was graded with students in all the British colony. So your scores were not based just on that country, in the country, of all the Caribbean, on all the countries in the British Commonwealth, and all the countries that were owned by the British at the time. So it was really competitive to be tested to go to a special school. So it's in Guyana, it's the opposite in the United States. If you go to a government school, it's better than a private school, because if you don't test very well in that IQ test, which was called a common entrance test, then your parents had to pay, if they can afford it, to go to a private school. If not, there's no high school for you. But it's the opposite to United States of America, where the private schools are better than the government, and in some cases, not in all cases, but in the majority of cases. So I had a very solid education based on the fact that whoever was taking over the country at the time from the British were prepared to give the students the best education, because they will be the leader of the country.
so based on your education in Guyana, can you shed a little bit light about how the education system works for women there versus female versus male? Was that part of challenge, or is that normally accepted? It's very pretty equal.
And this is a very, very important question, because women are, even in the classes, you can tell the girls are not treated equally as the boys, because they're meant to be wives. That's one of the things I learned at a very formative age, when the government there took over from the British. This started, girls being trained to be wives began with the British. We were trained we had to be knowledgeable about wine and carpet, because the idea was you were prepared to be married to someone, but your place was to be in a conversation with the other woman to talk about these things. But when Chelly Jagan came and Burnham came and took over the country from the British, that was stopped. So girls were taught math and science, and not about the triviality. Unfortunately, things went backward, because there was a ceiling for women. And that's one of the impetus to moving to the United States. I would have never been able to build a career I have now in the United States had I been in Guyana, because women were never allowed to go very far.
So who during that time, who do you think most helped you or influenced you to get to where you are now and have that fighting spirit?
I think the person who mostly influenced me were my parents, because I think in where I grew up in the home, it was girls were going to be educated, especially my mother, I think, more so than my father. I think she was the impetus behind everything, because she was like, you are going to have an education and you will go as far as you want, and it's up to you, not to anyone else. And I think she gave me a few things, like the desiderata that I have up to today in my office, that I remember. She said, read it every day, and that gave me the strength of dealing with day-to-day problems. She also told me that there are 3 things in life you'll be faced every day, and you have to make choice. It's smart choice, easy choice and the best choice. And she said the smartest choice will be the most difficult. It's very easy to select the easy choice, but it will be no foundation. And I think that's something simple as this has really led me to where I am. They also, I remember, in addition to my mother, I remember distinctly one teacher in high school. It was raining like regular tropical country, and sports was canceled, and he was just talking. And I remember distinctly said, no, there's all when you're in school, and when you go to any lecture, always listen. There's always something. There's never a bad class or a bad seminar. There's always something within that seminar. Listen. And I think that helped me a lot. So I attended all classes. I never skip a class, and I always listen. And so I was a student who never think there was a bad teacher, because there was always something to listen.
Wow, it's very nice. Can you tell us more about that desiderata that your mom gave you? What does it read?
Well, I was 16. I was a teenager when she gave it to me, and it's the same desiderata I have. Now I moved it wherever I am. But the two things I take out of it: listen to everyone. It's the same listening. I think that's fundamental. Everyone has something to say, and I don't care who that person is. I think there's something, and there's another thing I learned: never hate, because when you hate, you self-destruct, and it's too much energy is wasted hating, when you could always do something more productive, and all of that is included in the message of the desiderata.
Very nice.
Mm.
So after you moved to US, can you talk about the difference in the women's life, what you faced back in Guyana versus what you faced here? How the challenges were different, how the challenges were similar.
Yeah, so it was different, because once you're in school, at the time, in undergraduate, I repeated because I was a medical technologist in Guyana. So when I came, I realized right away no one cares about the education in Guyana, so I started over. And I want to remind you that I got a Phi Beta, I was inducted in Phi Beta Kappa, and it's at school that's very difficult, because there is no grade inflation, and it's 45,000 students. But what I realized, when you're in class, you're not treated any differently, whether you're a man or a woman. I did not see the difference until I was in graduate school. When I was in graduate school, that's now I was in New Jersey, that's when I see the male students were treated very different than the female students. It was not as, it was more subtle as it was in Guyana, but there was a difference. Then when I became a junior faculty, I started seeing the difference. It was really a huge difference. It was a fight. And I could tell you, because I had a daughter, and that daughter was very young. And I remember being called by the school because she was sick, and I had to hide to pick her up. Because when the men see that I was leaving to pick her up, it was, look at her, look at you. You cannot balance this career. And I didn't have tenure at the time, so I had to be careful. And in a similar situation, when the men were asked to pick up their children, the general attitude was that, wow, what a good father taking care of the child. So I had to deal with these two things. But one of the things I learned, never feel sorry for myself, never complain. It is what it was, and I had to make the path for future female who would be in science, and that's why my lab is predominantly female. I think the female, not by design, I think female feel more comfortable working in my lab.
Very, very nice. So, what do you think is? We still have a lot of scarcity of women in science. There are not many. It's getting better, but what do you think the biggest inhibitive factor is in this whole thing?
1 week ago, this was a topic of conversation. I believe there's too much regulation within the research environment, and this is going to chase women from science. This is my feeling. And when my daughter was young, I remember bringing her to the lab every day. She would take the bus, come to the lab, where she was able to do her homework. She had dinner, and then we went home together. It was just to sleep. Now you can't bring those children into the lab anymore, even if there's a safe space. And I remember all my colleagues, they bring their children to the lab while they were writing grant, they were doing the experiment, because you need the experiment to be done to get the data for the grant. And while you're doing that, you need to write the paper at the same time. And if you have small children, what do? If you can't bring them in to work with you? In today's days, you can work from home, but you can only write from home. You can't do the actual experiment. And as you're building a career as a junior faculty, you're on the bench. You're not a senior faculty. You have to be on the bench and writing and everything, all of that done in one place in a lab. I don't see that option now for women, and I'm not sure how women are going to be able to compete now. I see challenges. I really see challenges for today's women, actually. It seems like things may not be making sense what I'm saying, because it looks like there's more avenues open for women, but I don't see it in science. I see it more difficult, because why are there fewer and fewer scientists, female scientists now? That shouldn't be, but yet it is happening.
Actually, what you just stated is a very good fact, and I never thought about it before that, like this. But what do you think the universities or institute that have women in science can do better, so that they have will having childcare at campus or somewhere close will help? Is that something that can be done?
So our university do have a daycare, but there's a limit age. I think, and I've been proposing this, so no one is saying, and I'm going to push for this. What I think should happen, we have graduate student, we have medical student. I think the university should have a space and have the graduate student, medical student volunteer. I know they would be very happy to volunteer and have an aftercare program for these people. I don't think the parents need food for these children. Just like a space where they could even be supervised through their homework or something. And that should go until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the evening, because at the same time, these students who are tutoring or overseeing or maybe just supervising these kids, these same students could also be helped by the faculty also. Can be tutors. They can be a win-win situation.
So what has been the pushback on the idea so far?
The pushback is it's a lot of work. I think but I think if a lot of the women get together and push, I think our administration will listen. I don't think administration wants to have fewer female scientists. I think they want it, but they just don't know how to handle the situation. And I think female need mentoring too. We need to let them know that they have to have the attitude that they are going to be doing it, and they don't need anything different than the men have. It's just that they need a space to help with their kids, so they can be there late. They're not asking to go home early. They're just asking, I want to be there late so I could do my experiment and write my grants. Because if you're a female junior faculty, you're teaching also. And so that keeps you out of your lab, but then you still have to do your research so you can get your grants to be promoted. And when you have small children, how do you do that? So I think we have to have a mentoring of the female faculty too, not mostly by men, maybe a team of men and women. So because they have the mentoring, I think right now is focused on helping females to get a grant. But a grant alone is not going to give them their career. It's only part of the equation. It's an entire of how do you balance your life. And and maybe we should learn to teach. Maybe women should say no sometimes too. But that's tough. Like if you're a junior faculty building your career, that's tough. That's tough.
So moving on to next question is, when you talk during your career, you have mentored a lot of female scientists, and most of them have been very, very successful. You are loved by all of them. What is one message you had to give them to stay resilient?
Yes, that's a good question. All of them are working except one student who is in Abu Dhabi for this because her husband worked there and she couldn't find a job.
Mm.
But the one thing, and they're still in touch with me, and the one thing I've told them is exactly not to expect anyone to give. Don't expect because you're a female that you'd be treated any differently. Don't think that you're any different than your male counterpart. Just focus and don't and you have children, find a balance. You are being paid, so have a babysitter, a backup babysitter, and a backup of a backup. And I think that has worked. It's the common advice I've given both the male and female, both. And I think the female who have listened have had very successful career. I'm very proud of them.
Yes, I agree with that. So, I see you have over 200 publications, right?
More than 200.
Wow, that's amazing. And you always had a grant, right?
Always had one.
Always had a grant. So, besides being sometimes financially to run the lab, is there anything else in science that could be that's available for female scientists who don't have that financial backup with the grants and want to be, so sometimes you fall off the finances, right? You still want to continue. What are some of the best advice or avenues they can explore?
Yes. So most of the people who have fall off, and we will all fall off, right? But you have to be able to keep up with the new technology. New technologies is tough to follow. Even for someone like me who have journal club every week, I go to the scientific meeting. I'm speaking science just all day with the people in my lab. It's tough to keep up with the literature. And so you have to keep up because when you keep up, then you have to know where the science is going and to be always able to follow the science and continue getting funding. And as you can see from my CV, from my CV, I've been doing 3D modeling, 3D printing. We've tried to develop drugs all of our life in two-dimensional. That's not normal, what's in the body. And now we've at a standstill where drugs are not easily developed. Now we have to start modeling it three-dimensional, right? So I've been doing this. So you have to keep up with the technology and know where the science is going.
Okay. I know you have traveled a lot and you have met scientists from all over the world. What's the difference for women in science in US versus Asian countries versus Middle East countries? And how can they catch up with the rest of the world? Or if they are, what are some of the positive and negatives of different environments?
To be honest with you, I haven't seen a positive. The only positive environment you're in your home with relatives who, if you have children, you can help with child care. That's probably the only positive. There's a lot of negatives, women really are not seen. The last meeting I've gone to in an Asian country, and I've been told very openly that, oh, we need some female because we've been getting too male, so we need to sugarcoat. They openly said this. You're a female in that meeting, it's not comfortable to be hearing this, So they see you more as a female rather than as a scientist. I was told by one scientist in one of the Asian country that she has a problem because she does in this particular country the male scientists are out in the evening where they socialize, and since she cannot join because she doesn't use alcohol, she's been at a big disadvantage. It's not the same. And I don't know how that could be solved. I really don't know. It's an entire culture that has to be solved. I run away from a culture like this.
I think that's a very interesting point actually, that in general socializing is considered being in the evening or having around alcohol. Uh, how can we change the perception or environment around it so that socialization is not just getting to those meetings at the end of the day?
Yeah,
Could be more.
I think these societies, these scientific societies can somehow be involved. When they go and have a meeting in a nation country, they should maybe try to have a discussion with the local scientists that are arranging these meetings about, what they expect from them. And if they say something, try to point out without criticizing them that, this is how it's being done in other places and they seem to work. So it could be done, but they will take some common sense to get it done and maybe include other people, not just themselves. Because scientists sometimes are not trained how to interact with each other.
Any other message or any other thing that I can't think of that you might want to convey to our readers?
Yeah, I think whoever is going to choose science is a way of life. It's really, and if you don't love it, then this is not, you shouldn't follow it. Getting a degree is the least of the problem. But using that degree to become a scientist, you have to love science to be in it. It's a way of life. You have to wake up and be happy to go there. You have to be able to spend days and days and days and get negative results and still be okay with it. And if you can do that, then everything falls into place.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rameshwar, for being with